Hello, everybody. Right, I think we should start now. I just wanted to give people one more moment to be able to get onto this webinar, but let me share my screen and we can start. I'm hoping that everybody is able to see the screen at the moment. But on behalf of the organisers of the Ginny Valentine Badge of Courage Award and also its supporters, Green Book, so we'd very much like to support and thank Green Book, I'd like to welcome all of you to this webinar, where we're going to be announcing the winners, and we're also going to be discussing what we can learn about the role of bravery within the market research industry. I have with me today John Griffiths, who is the co-founder of the awards, and the judges for 2020, Deborah Campbell, the VP Consumer and Marketplace Insights Verizon, Pippa Rose, the Senior Manager Consumer Insights at BT, Finn Raben, Director General at SMR, Sue Van Meteren, the founder and director of Jigsaw Research, and Rebecca Brooks, founder and CEO of Alter Agents. The Ginny Valentine Badge of Courage Awards were launched in London in 2012 to recognise exceptional bravery in the market research industry. And since then, they've been supported by Green Book and hosted at IEX. Obviously, this year, there are changes with the current crisis, so that's why we're hosting the webinar today. The awards are named after the late Ginny Valentine, who was the ultimate revolutionary. She established semiotics in our industry in the UK, and she really made that a legitimate market research tool in the 1990s. 8 years on, the Ginny Valentine Badge of Courage Awards have recognised people showing courage in our industry from around the world. And this is everything from client researchers to agency startups, field workers, people that are young and old or older, people that are at individuals or teams. And we do have people that have been honoured both alive and posthumously as they've died trying to get the truth out into the wider world. So quite a variety that we have awarded in the past. But before we get to the announcements for this year's winners and the roundtable discussion, I'm absolutely delighted to introduce you to Bill Alexander, who is the son of Ginny Valentine and the inspiration of these awards. So what I hope that I can do now is if Phil could come off mute, that would be great. And let's meet Phil. Hi, Phil. Really good to meet you.
Hi, Fiona.
And we're absolutely honoured that that you've been able to join this particular webinar and the ceremony. And I just wanted to start off by asking you if you tell us a little bit about your mum.
Okay, she was fiercely intelligent. She was completely unafraid of intellectualism, although she also believed passionately in the importance of explaining complex ideas in an accessible way. She was kind of passionate about what she did. She was passionate about everything that she did, in fact. And her life story kind of unfolded in a particular way. She trained at RADA when she was young, and in her heart she was really always an actress. And I suppose the relevance of that for what she went on to do is that she understood the importance of stagecraft in selling an idea, which was kind of came in handy when she was confronted by suspicious, mostly male, middle-aged marketing heads around the world and things. She was a staunch feminist. She would never let a bit of casual misogyny go by unchallenged. But at the same time, she was a kind of wonderfully nurturing Jewish mother who was probably happiest and at her best when she was in a big noisy argument around the kitchen table or making dinner for 8 people whilst, you know, rowing about left-wing politics. And she loved to laugh. A lot of, even now, a lot of the things that, a lot of what people first remember about Ginny is her kind of evil cackle, generally accompanied by a few choice swear words.
Thank you very much indeed, Phil. Well, I certainly remember your mother very fondly, and thinking how impressive she was and what a great role model she was for particularly actually other women in the industry at the time. And I realized that it's actually now 10 years since her passing.
Will be, yeah. Yeah.
And it really doesn't seem that long ago at all, where we were awarding her with the #1 revolutionary of all time for the Research Liberation Front. But it'd be great to hear your views in terms of what do you think she would have thought about these awards?
Well, she would have been delighted, of course. She wouldn't have been, not that particularly she liked having things in her name, but she would have been delighted that the awards are a recognition of risk-taking and of believing in what you do, which were two things that kind of characterised Gin's own approach to life. I think she would have been especially thrilled with the internationalism of these awards, with the gender equality, with their democracy and with their accessibility. But more generally, I think she would have embraced the ideological implications of these awards. It's, you know, it's almost always harder to do something new and something different. It's harder to challenge expectations than it is to go along with what's already there. We all know that. But then, of course, without people doing things differently, we don't get anywhere. We don't even stand still, actually. We kind of go backwards because we dig our feet in, you know, resisting new views. So we need these we need bravery, we need challenges to our thinking. Now, I'm not a market researcher, but I do know that market research is not often famed for its risk-taking. You know, partly because of its historical development, partly because of the sums involved these days. And so to have awards that recognise that kind of unexpected and recognise the unexpected and recognise the brave is a great thing. And Ginny would definitely have loved that. I mean, you mentioned her Research Revolutionary Award. I remember how thrilled she was and how proud she felt when, and how valued she felt when she got that from you guys. And it wasn't just to have won an award, but, you know, who doesn't like that? It was because she won an award that spoke particularly to the way that she had stuck her neck out, you know, for what she believed in. And I think obviously she would be delighted with these awards recognising the same sort of belief.
Thank you. Well, first of all, we're incredibly grateful that you were able to make it today, Phil. Thank you for that. Your mum was amazing and marvelous, and we're so pleased that her spirit is living on in these awards, and we've got some fantastic award winners this year. So I think I'm going to now hand over to John to actually announce the awards.
Shall I mute myself?
You may mute yourself.
Thank you. Thank you. Just before I mute, thank you very much for inviting me. It's a real pleasure and a privilege to be asked to introduce this. So I'm looking forward to the next hour.
Thank you very much, Phil. It's also a reminder that we made a number of podcasts which feature interviews with various people. And Phil was interviewed talking about what it's like having a mother like Ginny Valentine. And I particularly enjoyed the story about when he was supposed to be doing schoolwork. She made him paste up these things called mood boards. Anyone heard of those before? Well, he'd never heard of them before. And it seems to me that Ginny Valentine was one of the first people to actually start to use mood boards in the course of her research in the early 70s. So, you know, just a lovely little piece of history there. So thank you, Phil. And we'll make sure we get these podcasts keep coming so you can hear a little more about the judges, winners, and of course, Ginny Valentine herself. So can I say what an honor it is for me to be here? Normally I find out hours later because we've had the awards the last few years in the States. So this is the first awards I've been able to be at since I think one of the very first ones, which was in the Martyrs Church crypt, very appropriately. But there we go. It's a real privilege now to read out the winners for the 2020 Ginny Valentine Badge of Courage Awards. There are more than one, if that may come as a surprise to you, because there's more than one kind of bravery. So the judges have fixed on different ways in which these winners are brave. I'm not going to explain anything about the awards. This will come out of our subsequent discussions, but let me just read them out now. So our winners this year for the 2020 Ginny Valentine Badge of Courage Award are Lena Chinu of Heineken for challenging the purpose of a 150-year-old organization. To Kalinda Fisher for the Great Reset for selflessly bringing together opinions that are poles apart. Dr. Polibio Cordova of Chidatos for publishing unpopular polls, Conrad Kalau of Craft for the tenacity to represent the voice of minorities, and lastly, Joanne Hall from the connected with the City of London Police for challenging received wisdom from the edge. So I'll just read their names again: Lena Chinu, Kalinda Fisher, Dr. Polibio Cordova, Conrad Kalau, and Joanne Hall. Congratulations, everyone, of those who are our winners.
I thought first look at them. Put that up there because then we can all see who the winners are. And I know that we have, I think, some of them on this call today. So many congratulations to all of you. I'm going to stop sharing now. Okay, so I think we're at the point now, John, aren't we, of introducing the judges and
Yep.
and starting some discussion there. So I can probably just actually share my screen. That might be the easiest thing to do in terms of just announcing the judges. If I can get the hang of this screen share and doing Zoom, let me do that. This is some technical challenges here today. Right, okay, hopefully that makes sense and that we can see the judges. But absolutely delighted to be welcoming Rebecca, Sue, Pippa, Deb, and also Finn. We're hoping that Finn might be on this call. He was having some difficulty getting on earlier. So very much hope that Finn, you've been able to join. We always make sure that we have a mix of client and agency, and we always have 5 because there's a lot of discussion and debate. So that's why we have the 5 judges. But I'm going to stop sharing this now so that we can actually just have the conversation with the judges. And just to start with any of you really who'd like to join in with, what was your experience of judging? Why don't we start with perhaps somebody on the client side? How about Deb? Let's start on the client and then we'll move on to agency.
Hello, everybody who is watching the webinar. So this was a really wonderful honor for me, and I really appreciate the opportunity. You know, I've been a judge on other things before for like ARF, and usually the judging is based on results and impact. And it was really a great experience to actually nominate and understand the actual researcher and what they did as opposed to the data. So it was really fascinating for me to understand all the different kinds of courage. And it really made me feel grateful and excited for being in customer insights, which I've been for 30 years. So thank you for the opportunity.
Brilliant. Thank you very much indeed, Deb. Pippa, shall we carry on with the client perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. It was a great opportunity, I think, to step back from what you do and what you're used to doing and seeing how there's such a variety out there of insights, the way it's integrated, but also all the wonderful people who truly believe. It's obviously great to hear what your peers do and to realise the impacts that we can have. And also just a reminder that being brave is a risk worth taking.
Brilliant. And I'm delighted to see, Finn, you managed to get on here. So I think we should turn to you next and get a viewpoint here.
Thank you, Fiona, and I apologize for the technological challenge in getting on. It seems to be that the one thing that we're all doing these days is learning how to deal with technology better as we're on video calls so often. Well, firstly, let me just echo my thanks. It was really lovely to be part of this process because you've been very good in inviting us to seek out perhaps some candidates in the past. And so to see the process this year from the judging panel was a really wonderful change and a treat, an honor really, to be able to look at so many of the different submissions. And we are exceptionally lucky, I think, when SMR as a business tends to get to see an awful lot that comes from all over the world. And these were submissions that made that manifest, if you like, the breadth of talent that we have, the depth of experience and expertise, and the willingness to take on a challenge which is above and beyond what would normally be in the business. It was an absolute pleasure to read through them, and for me, a real treat to be on this side of the camera, if you like, as opposed to on that side of the camera. So it was a really wonderful experience, and thank you for that.
Brilliant. Thank you very much indeed, Finn. Rebecca, shall we go to you to get any thoughts from your side?
Sure. I mean, like everybody else, it was a real honor to be a part of this process. I didn't know what to expect coming in. And it was a really moving experience to see, you know, we're used to talking about the impact that research can have in terms of changing an organization. But to see researchers out there, whether as part of their job, as an extension of their own passion for research and insights, pursuing change in the world. And it was a real reminder for me of how important our industry is and how important it is to champion, you know, truth and data and connection. So I was really honored to be a part of it.
Brilliant, thank you. We're not going to continue by just doing round robins round the judges. I should add for everybody that's listening, but I do think it's good if we at least hear from everybody at this first point in terms of the experience of judging. So Sue, it'd be great to hear from you, and then I'm going to hand over to John to carry on a little bit after that. What was your experience like?
Hello everybody, an honour as everybody has said, but also one that I must say I had quite a degree of trepidation coming into it, because bravery per se wasn't something that I had automatically associated with our industry. And yet the more we talked about it, the more we discussed it, you could hear that not only is it absolutely key to our jobs anyway, and that was one of the challenges that we'll come on to, how to split brave as business as usual versus extraordinarily brave, which we think our winners displayed. So absolutely fascinating and actually very inspiring to hear the stories.
Brilliant. Thank you, Sue. John, shall I hand back to you? And you
indeed, thank you. Well, my next question for the judges, and you can all pitch in as and whenever, and you may have particular examples you want to mention. What were the highlights for you? Now, this is going to be difficult because I know there's going to be people, winners, who are sort of actually attending this, waiting for their names to be called out. We may not get around to everyone, but I'm particularly interested in the things which stood out for you when you saw the various nominations from which you drew the winners. Who would like to lead on that? Anyone want to wave? Yes, Ben.
Thanks, John. So today is a rather, today and yesterday are rather auspicious days in the Dutch calendar. Yesterday was Remembrance Day, and today is Liberation Day. And they are days that are marked by the entire country falling silent at 8 p.m. to remember those that have ensured that we can live in the circumstances in which we do. And it's a wonderfully kind of emotive day, or a couple of days, but it reminds us essentially of our humanity. And I think what I loved most about going through all of these submissions is that while indeed the definition of bravery changes, it was the remarkable kind of motivation and desire on the part of all of the candidates to try and take something on so that we don't do as we usually do. And, you know, change is a tough thing to deal with. Some people like it, others don't. But I thought that desire and that readiness to take on challenges to make sure that what we do would be better for the future was something that kind of, you know, ran through all of the submissions for me. So that was something that really struck me.
Okay, thank you. Another one of the judges.
So one of the things that I thought was interesting was when I was asked to be a judge and started to think about bravery, it was pre-COVID, pre-shelter in place. And so I had one way of looking at the world. And by the time we got to the actual judging itself, I was shelter in place, and the world was really, really different. And I think that as I went through the stories, what was, again, very different forms of bravery, but what was really a common thread for me was resilience and flexibility. And that every one of the people that were nominated, whether they were ultimate winners or not, had a personal and professional goal that they absolutely believed in with all their heart, and they were just overcoming obstacle after obstacle after obstacle. And I think that in this time of shelter in place and medical fears and economic fears, to have role models of people that just really don't give up was inspirational, again, not just in the context of being a market researcher, but also in the context of being a human being in this time.
Okay. Thank you, Deb. Thanks very much. Everybody else? Hello, there's people coming in. I'm trying to work out if people are pressing buttons or not.
No, you're right. I thought I was quite subtle there. I think one of the things that stood out to me, something Fiona referenced at the beginning, was the variety and the democracy almost of bravery, so that what's brave has multiple definitions, but also can be done at any age, by any gender, from any country. It doesn't require you to be living in a war-torn country. It doesn't require you to be middle-aged male from Oxbridge. You know, everyone needs to and can be brave. It really is an open playing field.
Okay, thank you, Pippa. Somebody else? Sorry, it looks like I'm going to go around everyone again, because we'd love to hear your voices. Rebecca?
Yeah, I think that, you know, for me, it was really illuminating to have the conversation with the other judges about what defines bravery, and then looking at all of the different aspects of bravery, that it isn't just a simple definition, that there are lots of different ways that people can be brave. And it really expanded my viewpoint on, again, the power of this industry and what we can do and the possibilities in front of us and how we can use our skill sets to really make an impact and a difference. So that process of kind of broadening my mindset about what bravery is, I think was really fascinating and powerful.
Okay, thank you. So I don't want to leave you out, so come and tell us.
Sorry, so yes, just really to support what the other judges have said. I think you know, everybody has a chance to be brave, and everybody should be brave. There is bravery inherent in our job, in that we're at our best speaking truth to power, if that's the popular phrase at the moment. But I think, as Pippa said, before I looked at the entries, the nominations, I was thinking, okay, bravery must be somebody who's ducking mortar bombs in some war-ravaged country. And in fact, many of the very impressive entries were about resilience, and there was jeopardy, but it was more jeopardy of a sort of a career or reputation stake, that there was perseverance, that they didn't have to do it, and there was just so many examples of really very brave and inspirational people, you know, in very ordinary roles.
That's great. Thank you, Sue. I think one of the challenges when we first started doing this, we'd ask companies to say, well, would you like to nominate brave people? And certain companies who shall remain nameless said, well, when they're being brave, we don't talk about that. So effectively, you know, if bravery is necessary, that's confidential. So I'm hoping actually that there's a culture change which has been going on these last few years, so that people actually are confident to say bravery is a good thing. Employees should be encouraged to be brave, and this is something which needs to be part of the culture. So I'll hand over to Fiona for our next question.
Yeah, I was just wondering, John, because I'm kind of going off piece now, whether it might be worthwhile just putting up the winners again, just so that because there were some wonderful stories with each of these winners. Let me just have a look at the winners and see if we can share this, just in case there are any particular things that came out that we should mention, because we do have a mix, I think, from the client side, from agency, and from different countries and from very different kind of different kind of research challenges. And I just wondered whether any of the judges wanted to perhaps mention one or more where it just had struck a chord. I mean, obviously, I know that all of them you all recommended, and so that's where that is. But I just wanted to see if anybody wanted to just pick up on any of the stories, because those may be interesting for the listeners to hear about. And please,
yeah. So
brilliant.
So, go ahead, Rebecca.
I was just going to say that all of these stories were really inspiring. Kalinda stood out for me in that her story, and I'm probably not going to sum this up accurately, but Kalinda is using her moderating techniques and her ability to facilitate conversations to get people with really stark opposing viewpoints together at a dinner table to discuss their points of view and to find some sort of commonality and bridge between them. And as an American, these last few years, those conversations have been quite difficult. And in fact, many people are just simply walking away from those conversations. And that Kalinda saw that problem and leaned into it and wanted to try to work on it and had the skill set to do so and apply her research knowledge to really trying to solve a problem. And then it's spread. I think it's in 20 different states now. And I think that's remarkable. Was just really inspired by her willingness to take on such a huge challenge.
Thank you, Rebecca. And I think Deb, were you about to listen as well? Because it's great to hear you.
The beauty of Zoom. See, we are all so impressed with all of these winners that we all just can't wait to talk about them. I was particularly inspired by Lena. What she did is, through research and insights, she was able to identify that Heineken really needed to be more than a beer company. And I think that what is interesting about her story is that she had to convince, very, very senior people, sometimes 5-6 levels above her, to actually change the identity of the company. And I remember way back in my past, I used to work for Nestle, and we were talking about their infant formula. And I was making some recommendation, and my boss at the time said, Deb, the Nestle is a very proud company, and you're really attacking the base of their pride. And I remember that when I was looking at Lena's, and I began to think about how corporations who have been around for a long time really begin to have personas similar to people. And that when you as an insights lead begin to challenge the very essence of that corporation, it can be very personal. And people get very dug into who they are and what they stand for. So again, for Lena, it was not just showing data that says this product is better for us. It was really challenging the very essence of who this company was and working her way through all of the emotional fallout from that. So I just think that takes a lot of bravery, a lot of courage to stand up to the powers that be. And I'm assuming that at some point she thought to herself, it would be a whole lot easier for me and probably safer for my career if I just stopped talking. But she didn't. So I really admire that tenacity and authenticity and putting herself out there to challenge the status quo.
Thank you very much indeed. It's wonderful to hear about these, your reactions and to feel that we've got such amazing role models, I think, within our industry. Anyone else who'd like to just mention anything about any of the winners or anything that struck them particularly? Finn, go for it.
Thank you, Fiona. And by the way, can I just echo Deborah's comments on Lena's submission firstly, because I'm very lucky enough to know one of her colleagues, Tony Costello, and I'm aware of the size of the challenge within that company, and so I would very much wish to echo and reinforce many of Deborah's views that she's just voiced. In addition, however, I'd also like, personally, the one that was singled out for me was, if you like, the political opinion poll of the Sedatus group. I risk making a generalization here about Latin America, but it does appear to be that the choice of which data you use as a government in Latin America and the laws of governance around that tend to be, shall we say, a little more flexible than they are perhaps in other jurisdictions. And I think taking on the establishment in order to ensure that fair and honest and open information is shared, and that it is not a shuttered single view that is provided to the electorate, it is an incredibly brave thing, not just from a personal perspective, but from a business perspective, and equally from a reputational one. And the thing that I guess that submission underlined for me is that this is not the first occasion where we have seen such extraordinary bravery taking place in that region about trying to ensure that the truth comes out, essentially, and that what one might consider unpopular is actually considered by many to be the important and open information that needs to be shared. So that was one that struck me. It's an incredibly daunting decision, I think, to have to take, to say, do I do this at risk of whatever in that region? Firstly, and secondly, it just goes to show how incredibly strong and ethical, if you like, the business that we have seen so far in Latin America is. So I would certainly like to commend the Sedatus group for the work that they did there.
Thank you, Finn. And I think what's great is obviously you do have such a global perspective in your role that you're really able to bring that to the judging table and to enlighten the rest of us in terms of issues of that sort, which I think was really, really helpful. I don't want to put everybody else on the spot, but would anyone else like to make any comments before we kind of move on, or John and I can make some comments? Anyone else? Oh, I can see Sue's unmuted herself.
Yeah, sure. And Pippa, I don't want to steal both of yours, but Conrad and Joanne, both for the other two winners. In many ways, their stories were somewhat similar in that they. I'll start with Conrad and why we were so impressed with that nomination. There's so much pressure on us in research to look for shortcuts and to get results quickly, and sometimes you have to challenge that and take your time and be immersive and do it properly. And Conrad did that with his studies on ethnic minorities and their views on terrorism, and also racism in football, both of which could not be rushed and required Conrad to be absolutely respectful of his participants in a way that required him to immerse himself in their worlds and really ensure that the insight he was able to build of their lives was not only a true reflection of their values and their thoughts and their experiences, but also could then stand up and deliver that to an audience that was perhaps probably middle class white, not terribly open to hearing an alternative point of view, but did that. And similarly, Joanne, that she. Her role in the Met Police in the police was to ensure that, again, an organization which hadn't historically based any of their decision making on consumer insight was almost forced through her tenacity and persuasiveness to act upon that in such a way that her research was sort of copied in several other countries around the world. So both sort of similarly standing up for their audiences and ensuring that the voice of their participant, that their audience was in fact listened to and understood by their clients.
Thank you, Sue. Well, Pippa, we have to hear from you now because, but I think you can say anything about anybody because we obviously know how well regarded all these winners were, but we'd love to hear from you.
I'm not sure I can add much, to be honest. I concur with everything that's been said, and I think it's just tenacity, I think, is a great word, and also not putting themselves first, because as mentioned, if you were thinking your career and your future, you may not necessarily in the short term have taken those risks. But that belief in getting true consumer insight out through whichever business it is you may be working for or with is the core of why we do what we do, but it's great to see it actually come through in real life.
Brilliant. Well, I would just like to thank all of the judges there, because I clearly went off what we were kind of thinking about. So thank you for stepping in. And I think it will help everybody listening to understand how inspiring these individuals have been. It'd be great, though, to hear a little bit more about what can we learn about how bravery can make a difference to our business. And particularly, I think, at this time as well, would anyone like to start with any thoughts around taking bravery and thinking about the business difference that we can get from that? Anyone who wants to unmute themselves, feel free to do so now, and you get onto the big screen. Oh, Sue, I think we need you to unmute. Sorry.
I am unmuted. Sorry. One of the things that distinguished the winners from some of the very worthy nominations was we had quite a lot of debate around what was business as usual and what was business going above and beyond. And there were usually elements of resilience, a higher degree of jeopardy, in terms of, you know, either physical danger or reputational danger. And also sort of going the extra mile, all of which is probably more true now than ever. You know, if we look at the current environment that we're in, then certainly we're having to be more resilient. And indeed, you can see around you the companies that are sort of grasping the nettle and pushing on enthusiastically, and those that have somehow sort of frozen in their tracks in the face of the current crisis. So a degree of resilience, a degree of single-mindedness, a degree of going the extra mile, all of which are just sort of even more relevant than ever in today's environment.
Thank you, Sue. Anyone else want to chip in on this one? Or have we covered it?
It's kind of interesting is to ask the question, under corona conditions, are we brave, or are we just having to put up with the necessities? So what does bravery mean? Breaking out of the necessities. It was an interesting debate I saw on LinkedIn recently about whether research companies were doing the right thing by simply closing down and then coming back and doing research when it was a time, or was it brave or foolish to keep on looking for customer points of view all the way through the crisis, for example. I just thought I'd provoke,
I mean,
provoke our panel.
On that one, John, I think it should be absolutely out there, and we should be helping people to understand consumer sentiment at the moment, because things are changing so quickly. But I shouldn't be answering myself. I would love to hear if anyone else has got something to say on this.
Well, so allow me then to chip in a little bit. I mean, one of the things that we pride ourselves on as a community is our ability to provide knowledge or fact-based evidence to help a company, a government, or an institution to make better decisions. There are undoubtedly times when that resource, that capability, is probably far more important than in others. And I think we're in one of those times when we clearly need to understand what is the change that is being gone through by consumers and by citizens, and that it is clearly very important for all of the institutions involved to keep their finger on the pulse of change. You know, what will the new normal be? I'm not sure anyone truly knows. I was intrigued to hear Jacinda Ardern say today that travel to New Zealand is not going to be likely for at least 12, if not 18 months. Now, I'm sure Air New Zealand would have had a bit of a fright when they heard that. But such is life, and we don't know what that future is going to hold. And I think certainly the thing that we have to remember is that we're an incredibly broad community globally, as I said earlier, with a huge wealth of knowledge and depth of experience and expertise. And that is a resource that needs to be continually deployed to be able to make sure that, rather altruistically maybe, life, but generally commerce, business, and indeed our general consumption patterns remain viable, that they remain sensible, etc. So I certainly from this entire exercise feel that to a degree we've been somewhat reborn as a profession and as a skill set, and I think it's an opportunity for us to shout loud from the rooftops about the great things that we do, and I think this is just one of those vehicles whereby we can do it. So sorry if that's a little bit too evangelical, but I do fundamentally believe that sometimes we're undervalued, and I think this has provided an opportunity to really underline and put in big, bold letters and shine a spotlight on the tremendous value that we bring.
Thank you, Finn. I'm certainly an evangelist along with you, so that's definitely where I would be coming from. I'm conscious that time is moving on, and
Yes.
John, I know we need to sort out about submissions and things, so I'm going to hand over to you to see if you can help on the getting a great submission.
We do. I'm not going to tell you how to write a great submission, but I'm hoping our judges are going to help us because they know what worked for them. One of the challenges is that when you do get these submissions, sometimes we get long screeds, sometimes we get 2 or 3 lines, and we have to go back and say, well, I'm sorry, that you need to tell us a little bit more about why you think this was brave. So one of the challenges, which is always why getting nominations is always a challenge and takes people a while. They say, oh, I've just thought of something, but they've known about the awards for years. So can I have some feedback from our judges as to tell me, if you now, knowing what you know now, and you had to write a submission yourself to nominate somebody else, what would you write? What would be in that submission? Who'd like to contribute on that one?
So I'll take that one
Okay,
first.
Deb.
So the submissions were all very, very, very different. And as John said, some of them were just a couple lines, some of them were a full page, and I don't think it has so much to do with length as it does detail. And so the ones that were, at least for me, winners, gave a lot of examples. They were detailed in what this person had to do and what they had to accomplish that was unique. So, a lot of people face adversity. That's not to say that that isn't brave, but we're looking for role models. And so it's not about length. It's about really helping the judge to understand what is unique and what is different about what this person did that made them brave. And I think obviously that advice is not just for submissions, it's for how to have your mid-year and year-end review, it's how to interview for a job, but it's more than just saying this person was really brave. It was about this person was really brave in this way because, and this is how they did it. And the best submissions, again, I went into this like all of my fellow judges, not really understanding what judging for bravery meant. And so the best applications really helped me understand bravery in all of its different forms.
So you're picking a particular kind of bravery as well, not simply bravery. Who's next? Okay.
Yeah, I would also say that one of the debates that we had quite a bit was, is this just somebody that's really good at their job? Or is this somebody that went above and beyond what somebody that's really good at their job would do? And so particularly for those that are not quite as obvious, right? Like I think where we sort of had the question of like, well, that's great, but what was the risk? What was the thing that they were doing that made this unusual? Would be really, really helpful.
Okay. Just to pick up on that, I would be the last to accuse any of our judges of having dorsal fins. But if there was one, kind of entry guaranteed to raise a dorsal fin, it would be something like, here's something from someone whose job title involves innovation, who's been very innovative. And you could see the dorsal fin coming up and just going, I'm not having that. Anybody else like to comment on, again, a good submission to give people an idea as to what a good submission looks like? So if you are working in innovation, what would be bravery in innovation, for example?
Oh, that's a slightly different question.
It is. Sorry.
So for the original question,
yes.
I was just going to say for me it was two things. It was
Yep.
context and simplicity.
Yep.
So simplicity in language and storytelling, not a simple bravery, but something that you could get very quickly. Again, a direction given to all agencies when writing debriefs.
Yes.
And the context, which was Debs's point. I think that was key,
Yes.
just remembering that the judges don't know your business. So we may know your business by fluke, but in general, the judges won't know your business. And therefore, that context of knowing just how hard it is, because there's no doubt that it wouldn't be written if it wasn't brave, but that has to come through. It's a sales pitch.
Yes.
Way. And sorry, your new question, which I've promptly forgotten.
I was simply asking the question that if somebody was working in innovation
Innovation
and had to demonstrate bravery, how would they do that without someone snorting and going, well, that's what I'd expect every single day of the year? It's kind of difficult in certain roles to demonstrate, but what really stands out when someone moves out of those traces?
I mean, innovation is brave. I worked in innovation for years, but I think that's partly where Lena's example of, as a result of that, could be innovation. So, breaking that norm, even in a place where the norm is innovation, what your new thing is going to be different, but also how you deliver it, what you've overcome and what you've said. Innovation in and of itself is going to be risky, but inherently, but you can still do it in a brave way.
Sure. Take on the entire organization, for example.
I mean,
maybe small
maybe
thing like
everyone doesn't need to do that, but yeah.
Okay, somebody else?
I think following on from what Rebecca said about the trying to differentiate between it's their job versus no, it was extra. It was a different level of bravery. Was sort of, we were looking for, did they have to do it, and if the answer was yes, because that's what they're paid to do, then we needed to see a little bit more. So how did they go the extra mile? And certainly there had to be, I think we found ourselves looking for the jeopardy, what was the risk of them doing this? Because if it was just, I've chosen to start a business, that's almost, for us, that wasn't quite enough to differentiate between the winners that we had here today.
Okay. Fiona, can I hand over to you to ask our next question?
I think we should, because we're coming up to the end, and what we'd love to do, and it will be a bit of a round robin this time, is just to have one key takeaway that we would like the audience to have. And I'm going to also invite Phil at the end just to give his view on what would one key takeaway be. So shall we go start with agency, Finn, client, Phil? How about that? So Sue,
okay.
You've got the stage. Are you able to give us what your one key takeaway would be?
Yes, certainly. Mine would be recognize bravery within your organization and reward it. And I don't think we do enough of that at present.
Lovely, thank you. And over to Rebecca, sorry.
That's okay.
I'm getting questions as well. Can people from the floor ask questions? So I'll say we can get one if they want to put one up.
Okay. Yeah, I would say that my takeaway was that we can all stretch a little bit. These people have done amazing things and taken their skills and applied them a bit more broadly. And that was inspiring to me.
Brilliant. Finn.
Yeah, I think we're probably in violent agreement on this, I suspect. And but to kind of take Rebecca's point a little bit further, it's don't be afraid to do it. I think, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, occasionally we can be a little bit shy about making that extra step and making that challenge. And yet, as guardians of data, as guardians of ethics, as guardians of insight, we're probably the best people to make that leap every now and then and provoke the thinking that is required, be it at board level, at governmental level, or whatever. So don't be afraid. Make that jump. We are the best at what we do, and don't, as the King of Holland said in his speech yesterday, he says, you know, let us not accept as normal when it's not normal for it to be done. So make the leap and keep doing it.
Great, thank you very much indeed, Finn. Deborah.
So I think, you know, my answer is very similar to Finn's, which is, as I read all of these, it was all about challenging the status quo. And I think what was interesting, first of all, is that anybody can do that. You know, there were people who were principals in their agencies, and then there were people who were, you know, lower down in the structure, and they were all willing to put themselves out at, you know, personal and professional risk to challenge the status quo. And right now, like my boss right now keeps saying, everything is on the table. And so I think if there was ever a time to use our insights about what works for people and what doesn't work for people and what they need in this new normal, it is right now. So everybody who's watching, go out, be brave, challenge the status quo with whoever you're working with, because there's a lot of opportunity to make the world a better place right now.
Brilliant. Thank you, Deb, for that. Pippa, on to you.
So I think, I mean, I very much would echo what everyone's been saying. I think we are the voice of the consumer. We are the consumer. To have their hearts and minds in the businesses, we literally just need to be brave. And that's be brave with everything we do, methodologies, open conversations, you know, be honest with what works, what doesn't work. Talk to your business partners if you're agency side, talk to your clients if you're, talk to your business partners, your client side, your clients if you're agency side, you know, just be transparent, but be brave, take the risk. It is appreciated, but not everyone's brave enough to do it. So, you know, give it a go.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Pippa. And Phil, can we put you on the spot a little bit to hear what you'd like as a key takeaway from these wonderful awards that your mum inspired?
Yeah, it's kind of difficult. You see all your planned things you're going to say knocked down one by panels of industry experts first. So I'm not sure I have massive amount more to contribute other than, as Finn said, violent agreement. Maybe taking a bit from my mum. Look at what questions are not being asked at the moment. You know, be brave in asking the questions that other people are not asking, and be brave in where you take your inspiration from. You know, there can be sometimes the most dynamic ideas can come from taking something from somewhere that wouldn't immediately strike anyone as inspiration. So I bet I would echo, more than that, I'd echo what's been said here generally.
Thank you. I'm going to hand over to John to wrap up. Before I go silent, I would just like to thank everybody from a personal perspective. I'm not sure I've been the greatest person managing all the panelists and the muting and the pinning and everything else. So thank you for bearing with me on that. But I'm going to hand over to John now. I think I'll be able to pin John's picture here to finish us off. Over to you, John.
Thank you so much, Fiona. So it behoves me, apart from to tell everyone, nominate, and I'm sorry we haven't had a chance to take on questions from those who've been watching, because there are some sort of questions and comments that have been coming through. Sorry about that. We'll try and talk to you about it a bit later. But I want to say some thank yous. First of all, to our judges, a big thank you to Deb, to Pippa, to Sue, to Becky, and to Finn, without whom this would not have happened. And it's always a relief when we get people coming in with a variety of points of view, just going, is this for real? Is that really brave? Is it not? And the fact that we've got the winners that we've got is because the judges took this seriously, didn't simply wave things through. So if you are a winner today, that's because 5 people thought you ought to be a winner, and you should be very proud of that. And to me, that's really important. So a big thank you to our judges. A thank you to our winners, to Lena, to Kalinda, to Dr. Polivio Cordova, to Conrad, and to Joanne. And hopefully we've been able to showcase a little bit the kinds of different bravery you've shown, and hopefully as people watch this webinar, they will be inspired not to one particular kind of bravery, but to other ones as well. I also want to thank, although I have to be a little bit discreet here, because sometimes nominators get to say shyly to their nominee, okay if I nominate you, sometimes they don't. So to all those who've nominated, a very big thank you from the shadows or in the limelight, and to say that it's a wonderful thing to be a nominator. Please go ahead and do it. Now you know how to write a good submission, and we will try and get some good examples for you to look at going forward. Also to explain, you can nominate from now on. You know, it's open for 2021, so start nominating, start thinking of names. And I think it's really important for us to bear in mind that the work goes on, that what we'll be doing, we have had a few podcasts, we will be making short films with the winners, talking about why they won, what it was like from their point of view, to discover that someone thought what they were doing was brave and worthy of winning. So there'll be short films coming out. I've already seen a film this morning, which blew me away, from Dr. Cordova, with armed paramilitaries storming a research company. Never thought I'd see that. So one of the great things about these awards is the way in which these stories are able to come out and not simply inspire people, but hopefully make us better researchers in the work we're doing. So thank you very much for being part of this webinar, whether you're an audience or you've been participating in the actual action. I just want to finish with one other name. Her name is Hoshe. She was our youngest winner. She would have been 28 this year, same age as one of my kids. And the reason she became a winner was that she'd been told by the Taliban to stop doing opinion polls, and she carried on, and so she was taken out of a car and shot. Now, those kind of bravery stories kind of blow other bravery stories out the water, or can, but I want to focus not on what happened to her, but why she did it. It would be very easy for us to talk in terms of, well, she was really committed as a research professional. It was really important to her. She was 19, for goodness sake. Why does a 19-year-old go on doing market research unless they think that market research is going to give them a better future, which is why they carry on doing it out of desperation, if no other reason? She may believe it was good for other people too, but she did it because it had to be good for her. And I'm hoping that one of the great things about these bravery awards is it gets us away from the podiums and the money and the cleverness and the results and everything else, and reminds us that raw guts is still what motivates people to go to work, and raw guts is going to get us through these next few months. And we need plenty of it. And I just wanted us to remember Hoshe, a 28-year-old who's not with us, and that's such a shame. But hopefully, if that inspires younger researchers to get involved in our business, or young people not working in research to get stuck in, that's the kind of caliber that we're looking for. So a recruiting drive. But hey, enough of my doing my little preach there. Thank you everyone for being along, and keep being brave. And we would say this, wouldn't we? But keep nominating. Thanks so much for being with us today on behalf of Fiona and myself.
Thank you very much, everyone. And thank you also to Green Book for helping us with this as well. We have recorded this, so anyone who wants to sign up for Ginny Valentine newsletters and get the recording, we would be delighted to do that. Thanks very much indeed, and we hope that this has been an inspiring session for you.